You're listening to
Path of the Jedi
with your host, Ronnie Cruz.
All right, welcome to Path of the Jedi, the podcast where Star Wars meets personal development. My name is Ronnie Cruz, your host for this adventure of gratitude. That's right, gratitude. Because there's just so much to be grateful for. I am really grateful for a universe that gives us exactly what we need when we need it. If your channels are open, you can really receive all the goodness and the blessings and well, yeah, just whatever you need at any given moment from the universe. It has signs are always out there, and so I'm grateful to be able to be on this adventure in such a universe, in such a galaxy where that is the case, right? So many things in the last couple of weeks have just, without even looking for it or without even asking for it, have crossed my path that has really just helped me and my sister, get through what we've been going through, right? And I know I've talked a lot about that in the last handful of episodes, but it's still kind of, I don't know. It's still very fresh in my mind. So again, I'm grateful that there are things that just are on my path to help guide me through any process, whether it's joy, whether it's sadness, any experience or circumstance that I've gone through in life. The universe has really just been there to guide me. And so, I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for all of you. I'm grateful for Path of the Jedi, right? This podcast has definitely been one of those things. I could have easily just taken, the last 3 or 4 weeks off, given everything that's been on my plate. But really, I'm drawn to this podcast because, I've said this before. It's as much a process of discovery for me as it is, I would hope, for you guys. And so if nothing else, right, like if I have 0 listeners for the show, it's still for me very much a learning process. I discover so much, I learn so much in delivering you guys the content in these episodes in the show. So many new ideas and pathways and neural connections happen in that process, and it allows me to really just continue to open up my channels to, again, the universe and the things that it puts in our path. So again, super grateful for all of you that listen and support this show. Thank you for continuing to do so. For new listeners as well, I'm so grateful for this podcast. And I just have a lot of gratitude in my heart right now as we go into today's episode. Now, I will admit that just a little bit lately, I've been kind of lost because there's no more Kenobi. I've spent so much time on this particular show, well, because of, the delays and things like that, and I've been behind. I always like to start the show after most everybody else is done with the conversation, so that I don't want you guys to be exposed to spoilers, at least as little as possible. But now that that's done, now that we've gone through this 2-month process with Kenobi, I found myself kind of listless and not knowing what to talk about. But then I remembered, and here's how the universe works, right? And that's why I'm so grateful for it. Then I remembered my colleagues and friends over at Bright Sun's podcast did an episode back in July, not too long ago, on The Chosen One. And I had remembered that I wanted to talk about The Chosen One. And so, I was like, okay, let's do an episode about what our perspective on The Chosen One and balance of the Force. And then that led to another idea, led to another idea, led to another idea. And so, it's one of those things. It's like, man, okay, just don't forget to be open, leave your channels open so that you can see the signs that the universe is pointing you towards. That's what we're going to talk about today. Not the universe, I already got through with all that stuff, but we're going to talk about The Chosen One. And, our take on what it means to have balance in the Force, right? What it means through the mythology, and then, of course, what it means to you and I as individuals. I mean, that's what this podcast is all about, right? And I think it's really really interesting how it's going to line up with the arc of the conversations that we've had thus far this year, right? Yeah, especially in the context of the two big shows that we've covered. It started off with Book of Boba Fett, and then of course we just finished Obi-Wan Kenobi. We've had some stuff in between there, but those two have had overarching themes in each one of them that I think really apply to the longer picture, the bigger picture of the conversation we're having so far this year. With Book of Boba Fett, it was all about creating new identities and getting a fresh start, which was actually perfect. And I don't know if the studio and production team planned this as far as like when they're releasing these shows, but that thematically was perfect for the beginning of the year, right? Because that's always the time when we're renewing ourselves, we're starting afresh, we're creating new identities, we have resolutions to do new things in our lives. And so that's, for me, where Book of Boba Fett sat. Right, like I really saw that as the overarching theme of the show. And then, of course, you get into, Obi-Wan Kenobi mid-year after having gone through, maybe some of the changes in life, you realizing then we have to, in order to make those changes, let go of some of the things that we've been holding on to from the past, right? And that's, again, exactly what, for me anyways, my interpretation thematically of Obi-Wan, that's exactly what it was talking about, right? And, obviously, maybe some of that is me projecting projecting themes and lessons that I see, but I think it works perfectly. And I think, if you listen back on those episodes, both from Book of Boba Fett and the Obi-Wan, I think I've defended and explained those rationales behind why I think those are the overarching themes for both those shows. So, leading into then the chosen one of now at the beginning of the year, we're looking to create new identities, to create new outcomes, start fresh, and getting to mid-year, we have to, of course, realize that we have to let go of some of the things that are holding us back, and then now that we've realized those things, where's the balance, right? Where's the balance in the force? So I don't know. I think it just kind of works out perfectly. And again, it's one of those things that the universe just kind of puts in your lap. So that's what we're going to talk about. We're talking about the chosen one. We're going to talk about balance in the force. But before we get to that, here's a quick message. Hey guys, real quick message here. I want to let you know that I absolutely love doing Path of the Jedi, and I love that this is a source of motivation and inspiration and learning and growth for you. I do also want to let you know that at some point, your personal development journey and your growth journey has to be self-directed. That's why I wanted to tell you today about Growth You. It's an amazing company, well, really more of a community. I decided to partner up with them and actually got certified as an advisor because it's based on science, right? It's psychological principles that will help you make lasting changes in your life. They have a program called Daily Growth that I encourage each and every one of you to at least consider taking a look at. With Daily Growth, you get a positive daily focus in all areas of your life, daily motivation and healthy accountability, simple and relevant lessons for your life, and an opportunity to feed your best self. And best of all, it's absolutely free. Just go to pathofthejedi.com/resources and click on Grow, and you can register for your own Daily Growth membership. Again, it's completely free, so you have nothing to lose. So if you're ready to live your best life, go to pathofthejedi.com/resources and click on Grow. Okay, so any conversation about the chosen one has to start from the prophecy. I mean, without the prophecy, there would be no conversation about the chosen one, right? So let's start there. According to Wikipedia, sorry, that's always hard to pronounce for me. Wikipedia. The prophecy is as follows. A chosen one shall come, born of no father, and through him will ultimate balance in the force be restored. Now, I want to take this conversation in 3 stages. Stage number 1, literal. Stage number 2, metaphorical. And stage number 3, reflective. from the literal standpoint, I think it's pretty tough to argue against the fact that Anakin was the chosen one. You really can't get around it. I mean, he's the only character that I know of in the entire Star Wars universe that was born of no father. I mean, there's no getting around that. And then on top of that, if you look at like his midi-chlorian count, he was easily one of the most powerful Jedi, not just of the age, but in galactic history. And then if you're talking about ultimate balance, you can argue that when he threw Palpatine in the reactor core of the Death Star, when in defeating Palpatine, he brought balance to the Force. And even if we count like the sequel trilogies, right, with Luke and Leia, and then Ben Solo having become Kylo Ren. By extension, Anakin having existed and doing what he did set his family and everybody on a track to bring ultimate balance to the Force, right? So I think, from a literal standpoint, if we had to pinpoint and identify an exact chosen one, like there is no really better candidate than Anakin in my book. That said, to limit the conversation to just a literal translation of the prophecy, really, I think limits us to talking about plot and story, because it is a work of fiction, right? And to try to figure out who the literal chosen one is would limit us to those things. And so by talking about things in a more metaphorical perspective, then that elevates this piece of work, the Star Wars universe, into mythology. The way I see it, if we're talking about the prophecy as metaphor, I don't necessarily believe that it's speaking to the need of a specific individual to bring balance to the Force, because the Force is the Force, right? Like it's this power, it's this energy that flows through everything in the universe. So I really don't think that the Force needs one specific individual to bring it balance, especially given that individuals come and go, right? Like in terms of the infiniteness of the Force, one individual, no matter how long they live, like even if you have Yoda, it's just a drop in the bucket in the speck of time that the Force exists in. So like having one individual bring ultimate balance to the Force seems impossible, and also actually kind of ludicrous. So looking at it from a metaphorical standpoint, I think the prophecy speaks to individual characters as having the ability to find balance in the Force within themselves, right? Because I think if we're looking at specifically the Star Wars universe and how the characters what they go through, I think the Force puts them in circumstances and puts them in situations that they need to grow through, right? That force them to kind of reflect and choose what tracks and paths they walk. Right, obviously with somebody like Palpatine, Sidious, he chose the dark side, right, and that brought him deeper, further and further to the dark side, right, and his quest for unnatural long life, his quest for more power, his greed for more control, right, like that drove him. And so if you look at a character like Sidious, he was never he never found balance, right? He never I think he never accepted or owned his inherent chosen one, right? Like that internal chosen one. If you look at a character like Anakin, I think one could argue that he did find ultimate balance within the Force, thankfully, right? Like he lived his life, his first part of his life as a Jedi, then he lived the second half of his life as a Sith Lord, and having gone through those things, chose the light, right? Chose balance, and tossed Sidious in the reactor core. So again, I think the Force puts you on a path and puts obstacles and circumstances in that path for you to make a choice. And then you get to choose whether or not you are going to be the chosen one for your particular journey, right? However long that journey happens to be. And you know, you can look at any character in the Star Wars universe. They all kind of go through their journeys, and you know, at the end of it, their decisions that they make determines whether or not they actually find balance, ultimate balance in the Force. Obviously, Luke went through it. He was tempted by the dark side. Rey didn't even hesitate to face the dark side and to jump in. Ben Solo, obviously, I mean, all the characters, even non-Force characters. You take Han, he was always, you know, thrust in situations where he had to make a choice of you know, doing the right thing or doing the good thing versus being self-serving, right? So you know, I think that's an awesome way of looking at this prophecy, and in that, you know, everybody has in their own story, in their own journey, everybody has the ability to be the chosen one, right? And it's the decisions that we make given the circumstances that's put before us, right? That determines whether or not we find balance. I think that's an incredibly elegant, beautiful way to interpret it. Again, you know, we have to kind of elevate the conversation beyond plot, beyond story, in order to make this really rich mythology, right? As opposed to just a movie that we watch, or a TV show that we watch, or a book or a comic that we read, right? That's the beautiful thing about Star Wars. There's so many levels of depth to it. Now, what does that mean from a reflective standpoint? And because it is, again, fiction, and isn't fiction art, and isn't art a reflection of life, and vice versa, right? Like, what does all of this mean to us here on Earth in this existence? I'm currently listening to a book called Abundance by Deepak Chopra, an amazing book. I think if it's not his latest, it's one of his latest. And I love his stuff. I've been reading Deepak Chopra stuff for years now. But in this particular book, he's describing yoga as you know, like this, the science of consciousness, and how consciousness, our existence, we exist on, you know, two planes: the plane of the physical realm, and then the plane of the spiritual realm, right? Which, you know, I tend to agree with. I think most people who have a level of spirituality or spiritual practice, religious practice, understand that there is there's our physical selves, and then there's our spiritual selves, right? Our energetic selves, our consciousness, right? Right, and so that to me is kind of the crux of what the prophecy is talking about here, with bringing balance, right? Because there are two sides, right? Like with Star Wars, there's the light side and the dark side. The dark side, in my interpretation and my reflection, is, you know, our attachment to the physical and material realm, right? You look at, again, Palpatine is the extreme example. It's all about greed. It's all about more power. It's about more, more control. It's about gaining longer life, and not letting go of this physical realm, really growing deeper and deeper into attachment to do whatever they possibly could, to not only maintain life, but to acquire more things, right? Like, again, very, very rooted in the physical realm. Whereas the Jedi, the light side of the Force, is very much a spiritual practice, right? It's very much in commune with the energetic nature, with the energetic power of the Force that flows through everything, right? And being at one with that, while also, you know, obviously existing on the physical realm. So it's that duality, I think, that I think it's very parallel to our own existence here as humans on Earth. Right? We, again, have the material realm that we exist in. We can't avoid it. We have physical bodies. We have to participate in society. We have to participate in culture and things like that, right? But there's also a deep sense of a spiritual side from whether, whatever your religious practice is or spiritual practice. I think there, as humans, we are all always kind of exploring that at some level or another. And the balance is either tipped one way or the other, depending on what we allow ourselves to really be grabbed by and pulled towards. Now, obviously, I kind of want to get beyond the conversation of good and bad, because those are value judgments, right? And I don't want to necessarily have those labels within this conversation and in this context. We can save that for another episode. But in terms of just like living your life and the experience that we all have as human beings, getting rooted to one or the other, I think, really determines that balance, whether or not we do find ultimate balance in our own experience, in our own force. And in that journey, we are the chosen ones. We have the ability to choose, as long as we continue to work on growing that awareness, right? And it's never a straight and narrow path one way or the other. We're tempted and we're swayed by I think both sides. Obviously, the light side and the spiritual side, I think, tends to have more balance, as it does in Star Wars. The Jedi and the light side users tend to have more balance within their own existences and within their own experiences. But it's not good or bad, right or wrong, right? We want to get beyond that. It's just more, for me, I think, an awakening of the awareness of that line that we walk within these two realms, right? I mean, obviously, we have to participate in the physical realm. Like, that's part of this existence, right? That's an unavoidable part of the existence, whether, it's on the scale of being homesteaders and you're pretty much self-sustaining, or, you're a full participant in society, driving a car, a house in the suburbs with a family of 2.5 kids, right? Like whatever, version of that is your existence, there's no avoiding it. I mean, we have physical bodies. We have to exist on this physical plane. When we get to things like materialism and lack and greed and even things like tribalism and I got to take care of mine, and versus me versus you and nationalism and things like that, I think those all stem from that dark side of the force, right? From being attached and anchored to the physical realm so much that you lose perspective, right? You lose perspective on the spiritual and energetic side of you, right? Right, and you get pulled into this endless, downward spiral, and at the end of it, find zero fulfillment, right? Find zero fulfillment because you're always chasing more and more and more. And again, Palpatine is the lesson for that, right? Look what it made him into. It made him into a freaking monster that just kept chasing more and more and more, and that just was no way to live. Completely out of balance, right? And so. With the light side, with the understanding and growing the awareness of the fact that there is a consciousness and a spiritual side of us, there's an energetic side of us that is beyond this physical realm, we can participate and exist in the physical realm in a more whole and complete and I think fulfilled way, right? You can still have prosperity, you can still have abundance, because that stuff comes from spiritual, right? That comes from energetic, and energetic and spiritual is naturally a creative force, right? Like the compassion and the empathy, all that comes from spiritual side, and we can have a more whole and more complete and more fulfilling physical existence at the same time as a result of having that balance. And again, it's just understanding and recognizing and growing our awareness of the fact that we have the choice. We have to consciously continue to grow that awareness. We have to consciously remind ourselves that there is more to it than just this physical plane, right? There's more to it than just getting more and acquiring more and more for me, right? Because that's all, again, rooted in physical, rooted in actually finite things, right? And getting attached to what ultimately will expire at some point. right? Because like we all have expiration dates. That's the reality of the situation. And so again, having a more fulfilling and enriched experience is to recognize that the light side of the force gives us more perspective on the physical experience that we're having right now. That's the balance, in my opinion. Remember, the force isn't just the light side. It's not just the dark side either. It encompasses all these things. And so to remember this is to remember that we are also both light and dark. We are also both spiritual and physical. We exist in the energetic realm. We exist in the material realm. And that constant reminder and growing that awareness allows us to have that balance. That's what it means to be the chosen one. To live in that ultimate balance means to live a more fulfilled, more complete, and more profound existence. All right, well, that's going to do it for today's episode. What do you guys think? That was kind of, that went in directions that I didn't really intend. Well, no, I intended, but it ended up being a lot more far out there than I maybe had originally envisioned. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It made sense in my head. It still does. I think the balance of the force and being the chosen one. We are the chosen one in our own lives, and so we must find balance between the light and the dark, between the physical and the spiritual. And ignoring, especially the spiritual, the light side, does have its ramifications, right? Its ramifications. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe I should have just said that and be done with it, and the episode would have taken 3 minutes. But I don't know. Does it make sense? What do you guys think? Let me know. You guys know how to reach out to me. You can reach out on Twitter, Facebook. It's POTJ Podcast. Of course, you can email info@pathofthejedi.com with the title of this episode in the subject heading, and just let me know your thoughts. Let me know where your head is at. I know we were talking about the chosen one, and that's definitely part of the conversation, but the grander in the grander context of how that applies to our lives. Do you feel like you're the chosen one, or do you feel trapped in chasing or falling down one particular path versus another path, right? And those are all things that I'm very, very interested in, because again, for me, I view Star Wars, even pretty much everything that I consume, even from an entertainment standpoint or from just an experience standpoint, the things that I go on in my life, I view those things through a lens of, okay, so what does this mean to me, right? Like, what does this mean to my life experience? So let me know what's on your guys' mind. I know I've said this before, but feel free to just ask any question and keep the discussion going, because you guys, you're definitely as much a part of this as I think I am, and your contribution will just make the conversation more rich and more complete. So hit me up again. Twitter and Facebook, it's @POTJ Podcast, and of course the email is info@pathofthejedi.com. And if there's any specific topic or subject that you want to talk about, or anything that you might be going through or have any questions about, seeking advice or perspective on, you can send that to me as well. Of course, send it to info@pathofthejedi.com, and I'm happy to discuss it either with you directly or talk about it here on the show if you want to hear me talk about it on the show. Of course, within the context, I'll figure out a way to put it in the context of Star Wars. but I think again, I want to really just continue to open this up to you guys, because I want to be able to continue to serve you guys, and share with you guys hopefully a perspective that helps you on your path towards becoming a Jedi, right? All right. So again, anyways, I've already told you all the different ways to get in contact with me. Reach out, don't hesitate. I'm here for whatever you need me for. All right, now it's time for the shout out. This week's shout out goes to our friend and colleague Mike over at Bright Suns Podcast, and actually to all our Star Wars podcasts out there. Our friends and colleagues in the Star Wars podcasting universe. It's such an amazing community to be a part of. And I wanted to give special shout out to Mike, obviously, because he inspired this episode with his episode of The Chosen One. If you haven't gone and listened to it, it's Bright Suns Podcast. You can find it wherever podcasts are available. Episode 16. Mike does a great job sharing his perspective on The Chosen One and who The Chosen One might be. And it's a wonderful, wonderful conversation that he has around the whole topic. And it's like, I think I've mentioned this in the past, but it's an incredibly, incredibly elegant, it's an elegant perspective on a relatively complex topic, which sometimes can be a very heated debate. I know I've thrown in, lots of different names for contention as to who the chosen one is. I've even thrown Palpatine in there for giggles, just to see what people say, right? But Mike does a great job over there at Bright Suns, and he's got a great podcast. It's a great show. He did a great job of sharing his perspective on the Bright Suns podcast. So go check him out and support again all my fellow Star Wars podcasters out there. This is a labor of love for the most part. Majority of us aren't doing this as a career. It's just because we love sharing our love of Star Wars with you, and each of the all of the Star Wars podcasts that I've listened to so far, and there's a lot of them. I've barely scratched the surface, but of all the ones I've listened to, they've all had amazing perspectives on Star Wars, because they just have an incredible love for it. So again, go check out Bright Suns Podcast wherever podcasts are available, and it's episode 16. Oh, let me double check that again. Yep, episode 16 for the specific episode that I was talking about. So again, thank you, Mike over there at Bright Suns Podcast. This week's shout out goes to you. All right, so that's going to do it for today's episode, guys. Next week, we're finally going to have a conversation about droids. That's right, androids in Star Wars. It's been a long time coming, and there's going to be a lot of layers, and we're going to have a lot of fun with this conversation. So make sure you tune in. The week after that, I'm actually going to be at Disney World, so who knows? We may get an episode from Galaxy's Edge. We'll see. I guess we'll just have to tune in and find out. So anyways, I appreciate all your guys' time. Thank you for tuning in and continuing to support the podcast here. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, rate and review wherever rate and reviews are available. It really does help us here, help us get found even more. So but beyond that, just keep listening and keep growing and keep being your own chosen one on your journey. So until next time, everybody, please be well, be safe, and may the Force be with you.